What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're all having an amazing day. I have been perusing online a little bit, and I've noticed that a lot of people are discussing the motion of the earth. I've been watching the chat boxes and the comment sections just to kind of see where people's heads are at. Are they comprehending this? What kind of questions do they have? That sort of thing. One thing I've noticed is that it seems like a lot of people are getting bogged down in the excess information. So, like how there's no pulling forces in physics, which is true, it's just applied pressure. About how displacement works, what causes this, what causes that, right? They're stuck arguing over all this excess information, which is important and necessary information to this position, but they're stuck arguing over all of this, and so they're totally and completely missing the basic fundamental reason why we're saying the earth can't be stationary. My main concern is new people coming into this, but maybe you're somebody that's been in it for a long time and you just accepted stationary earth and never thought it through like I did. So maybe this will bring you a little bit of clarity. Maybe this will be what, helps you to see why we're saying what we're saying. All right, I'm going to go through it. I'm just going to cut to the chase. It's not a very long video. I hope that you enjoy it, and let's get into it. We're going to start out with a quick history lesson going over Einstein's equivalence principle. Now, Einstein wrote the equivalence principle in 1907. I personally would say it is a death blow to heliocentrism, but it seems like not many in the quote-unquote flat earth community have looked into it, or maybe it's just not well understood. Considering the observation of objects appearing to move down towards the ground, Einstein pointed out that there are only two options to explain what we're witnessing. Either the object is physically moving down to the ground, or the ground is coming up to meet the object. But make no mistake, Einstein knew there was no downward force acting upon anything, and he even acknowledges that the true motion vector is up, not down. A motion vector is created by an external force. Whatever direction the force is moving in, when it contacts another object or matter, the object will move in that same direction. Now remember that Einstein was in support of heliocentrism. Because of this, he knew the ground couldn't be moving up with the earth being a sphere. So despite knowing there is no force moving anything downward, he went with it anyway, and then devised a crazy explanation for how inanimate matter can move down without a force so that heliocentrism could remain intact. Hence, the current heliocentric claim of gravity, the theory of general relativity, is born in 1915, which is the bending of a conceptual medium called space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. Note the term conceptual. One thing I felt was important to include is a quote by Einstein from a speech he gave in 1922. This quote is often taken out of context by those who are against the earth being in motion. Einstein stated, quote, "I have come to believe that the earth's motion cannot be detected by any optical experiment, though the earth is revolving around the sun," end quote. Einstein is saying that you cannot rely solely on your visual interpretation of natural phenomena. However, this was over 100 years ago, well before the technical advancement we have today, like digital accelerometers. In other words, now we have other means of determining what we're actually looking at, and we don't have to assume anything. Let's go back to the two options Einstein pointed out. Either the object is moving down to the earth, or the earth is coming up to meet it. This is the part where you'll want to listen close. If you're claiming that the earth is stationary, you have just removed one of those two options, that being the earth's motion. What this means is that you're automatically claiming the object is moving down. This requires a force, as we are talking about inanimate matter, which has no mechanism within it to move at will. Flat earthers have known for a long time that heliocentric gravity as a force is nonsense, and so is space-time bending. But no one has thought to prove whether or not objects are actually moving down at all. We've all just assumed it's true based on our perception, which is understandable considering that is how it appears to us. About a year ago, someone finally had the presence of mind to find out if there really is any downward force and thus whether or not inanimate matter is moving down. Since then, many other demonstrations have been done, and every single one proves without a doubt there is no force. So if there is no force downward, then nothing is moving down. It really is that simple. One thing I find very interesting about all of this is that for years now, I've watched and listened to flat earthers argue back and forth with heliocentrists about whether or not a downward force actually exists. We finally have observable, testable, repeatable proof that it doesn't, and no one wants anything to do with it. While there are many different reasons for their denials, that's not really what this video is about, but I just thought I'd point it out. By now you've probably thought, yeah, but what about all of the ball bearing tests that have been done where they measure the acceleration rate as the object moves down a tube filled with oil or water? This is a fair question and one I've heard many flat earthers mention, claiming this downwards acceleration rate is observable. Here we have a great example of the issue with relying on an optical interpretation of what you're seeing. The tester believes the object is physically moving down, then calculations and conclusions are made. But if the ball isn't moving down, then it can't be accelerating either, and the conclusion is incorrect. See the problem? So what does all of this mean for stationary earthers? Well, it means they have a big issue now because both options are gone. The object isn't moving down because there's no force to move it down, and it can't be the Earth coming up to meet it as it is stationary according to them. So what do? Well, they do the very same thing Einstein did. They claim the object is moving down regardless and then give differing explanations about how it is doing so without an external force. While there are several different explanations given by different people, like electrostatics and magnetism, the most common explanation I've heard is called relative density disequilibrium, or RDD for short. I'm going to focus mainly on RDD in this video, but I want to quickly touch on electrostatics and magnetism before I move on. The main issue I have with these two is that one must first accept that matter is moving in a downward vector. If this were the case, then analog and digital accelerometers would detect it, but they don't. And as I mentioned, many tests have been done proving there is no force, and they cannot be ignored. Therefore, electrostatics and magnetism cannot be causing something that isn't happening in the first place. Now, I'm not saying they don't play an important role in our dynamic system, but they cannot be responsible for a phenomena that isn't occurring. I have wondered if they might have something to do with the resistance to motion we see in all matter, but that's a discussion for another time. Let's get back to RDD. So what is RDD? First off, it is an actual effect we see in nature. Nobody is denying that. But it is the effect, not the cause. The explanation given by many stationary earthers is that objects are actually moving down, but it isn't a force doing it. They say that if an object's density is greater than the density of the medium it's in, then the medium moves it down. Think about that. The medium, which is inanimate matter, has the ability to move other inanimate matter. How does the medium know the rock's density to know where to move it? It isn't sentient. It can't think or know things. Also, the density of the medium surrounding the object is less dense as well, so why doesn't it go in any of the other directions? Let's work this out. Think about a small stream of water. A small rock is dropped into the water. The water has to be moving down to move the rock down. Now think about an air bubble rising up through the water at the same time. The water has to move up to move the bubble up. So the water would have to be moving up and down simultaneously. Don't forget, the stream is moving laterally as well. What is putting water in motion at all if there is no force? As you can see, there are many issues with RDD being an explanation, and I've only mentioned a few. But to be completely honest with you, the entire explanation is completely irrelevant because it starts from the assumption that objects are moving down. It would be like Me claiming that there is a magical substance that when smeared on your body makes you young again. Then I go on to write an encyclopedia sized book explaining how and why it works. Not a bit of my explanation is relevant because the substance doesn't exist in the first place. One thing I've noticed is that many of the stationary earthers tend to focus more on people dropping objects. But keep in mind that natural displacement, which is matter in motion, is occurring constantly without man's intervention. For example, rock slides, avalanches, rainfall, and waterfalls. These are all inanimate matter. And since we know that there is no force acting upon inanimate matter downward, we can then conclude that nothing is going down. I know it can be difficult to wrap your mind around this. And at the end of the day, you are free to think and believe whatever you like. You can ignore the demonstrations proving no downward force exists. You can continue to convince yourself that inanimate matter moves by itself. You can even do what Einstein did and accept a false interpretation of the phenomena and then devise some physics-defying explanations to settle your mind so that stationary Earth can remain intact. I personally prefer to take the intellectually honest approach, and in so doing, had to admit that the Earth cannot be stationary. So there you have it, y'all. That's the video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it was easy enough for you to comprehend. I don't really know how much more simple I can put it. One thing that I have been working on is a list of questions that I've seen a lot of people asking. Some of you may have the same questions. So I'm planning on putting a video together to go over some of those things to maybe help bring some more clarity. The more clarity, the better, especially in a topic like this. Another thing is that, you know, every day there's new people coming into to the topic in general, actually. And I would like to try to put some things together to try to, you know, help new people coming into it, because it's so easy to get lost in all the nonsense, all that, you know, excess information and stuff that doesn't really help anybody. So anyways, that's my plans for right now. So be looking forward to that. And I will catch you all again real soon. See you later.